William Shakespeare, a son of a glovemaker, a peerless poet and dramatist whose works have thrilled readers for more than 400 years, seems to have risen from modest means to become one of history's greatest authors. Most scholars accept that William Shakespeare was born in Stratford-upon-Avon and spent time acting in London before returning to Stratford, where he lived until his death in 1616. But actual documentation of his life is pitifully scarce. How could a man of such humble origins and education come by such wealth of insight, wide-ranging understanding of complex legal and political matters, and intimate knowledge of life in the English court? Not to mention the time period. There was no American dream at the turn of the 16th and 17th century. No from zero to hero. And since the 19th century, a roster of famous people such as Sigmund Freud, Mark Twain, Henry James, or even Charlie Chaplin have voiced their doubts about the man. The question remains unanswered. Did Shakespeare actually write the works attributed to his name? Modern-day historians believe that some of his works may have been partially written in tandem with others. But some scholars and even fellow writers are skeptical that Shakespeare wrote any of his sonnets and plays, and that Shakespeare was actually a pseudonym used to disguise the true identity of the real author. Scholars who believe that Shakespeare was indeed the author of his works are called Stratfordians. They contend that doubts about Shakespeare's authorship are nothing but a striking disregard for one of the most outstanding qualities of the writer, his imagination. Be that as it may, there are several conspiracy theories regarding the true authorship. So let's take a look at some of the hot candidates. Edward de Vere, a poet, a dramatist and patron of the arts whose wealth and position made him a high-profile figure in Tudor times. De Vere stopped publishing poetry under his own name shortly after the first works attributed to Shakespeare appeared, which of course led some people to think he used Shakespeare as a front to protect his position. They argue he may have used his royal annuity to pay Shakespeare, which allowed De Vere to maintain public anonymity. According to these people, De Vere's extensive travel throughout Europe and his deep fascination with Italian language and culture are reflected in the numerous works of Shakespeare. De Vere also had a lifelong love of history, particularly ancient history, which made him well suited to write dramas such as Julius Caesar. Unfortunately, De Vere died in 1604, which makes him an unsuitable candidate for the real man behind the name of William Shakespeare, because more than a dozen works were published after his death. Which brings us to another theory. My favorite, Christopher Marlowe. Like Shakespeare, Marlowe was from a modest background, but his intellectual ability saw him awarded with bachelor and master's degrees from Cambridge University. Historians now actually believe he balanced his literary career with a clandestine role as a spy for the Tudor court. Marlowe's support for anti-religious groups and publication of what was deemed an atheist work left him in a precarious and dangerous position. At the age of 29, before Shakespeare had produced any of his greatest works, such as Hamlet, King Lear, or Macbeth, Marlowe was stabbed to death in a tavern brawl. Unless that is, you believe that he faked his death and resurfaced as the Bard of Avon. His work undoubtedly influenced a generation of writers. He was the one who popularized the story of Faust way before Goethe. He even wrote The Merchant of Venice right before Shakespeare did. But could he also have been the author of both his own and Shakespeare's works? Supporters of the Marlowean theory believe that there are significant similarities between the two writing styles that cannot be overlooked. Marlowe's mysterious death in 1593 has led to centuries of speculation. Apparently he had been stabbed in an argument in a pub, but some claim his death might have been faked. Possibly to avoid an arrest warrant for all that anti-religious writing. Or perhaps to hide his role as a secret agent. Or simply to assume a new literary career as Shakespeare whose first work under that name, by the way, was published 2 weeks after Marlowe's death. Next up, Francis Bacon. He was one of the earliest alternatives put forward in the mid-19th century. A graduate of Cambridge, Bacon was highly accomplished. He was one of the creators of the scientific method. He was a well-regarded philosopher and rose through the ranks of the Tudor court to become Lord Chancellor and a member of the Privy Chamber, which I don't know what it is. But was he also the real Shakespeare? That's the argument that Baconians make, alleging that Bacon wanted to avoid being tainted with a reputation as a lowly playwright, but also felt compelled to write plays that secretly took aim at the royal and political establishment in which Bacon played a key part. Supporters of this theory believe that Bacon provided clues behind concealing secret messages or ciphers about his identity as a kind of literary trail of breadcrumbs. Some have gone to even further extremes, arguing that Bacon's ciphers reveal a larger alternative history of the Tudor era. But that's beyond the scope of this channel. While it might be fun to continue poking about in the pile of theories regarding this topic, we gotta move on to the vocabulary section.